Hola?
Kingdom Come Deliverance, for those of you living under a rock, it's set in 1400s Bohemia. It's a historical RPG that prides itself on being grounded in realism. So when the devs decided to throw in a gay romance option and a black dude, suddenly it's like the apocalypse hit.
Okay, yes, no problem.
Oh, and don't get me started on black people. Yes, guys, those existed for a while too. But not in Bohemia, you might be screaming for in your mom's basement, but guess what? He's a medic, brought in by enemy forces, an explorer. Yes, black people left their homelands to travel the world. It wasn't some isolated, only white people exist fairy tale.
Let me get my pen.
Henry doesn't suddenly become gay or bi because the developers decided it. His sexuality is completely up to you. His personality, your choice. If you see gay romance scenes, it's not because you misclicked once and now you're stuck with it. It's a repeated choice, something you actively decide to pursue throughout the game. It's all about choices. So I am begging you, put down your phone, go outside, touch some grass.
No, afuera!
So for anyone who is unfamiliar with Norei, she became well known after she somehow had a playtester for Dragon Age the Veilguard on her channel leak information about the game. Norei rightfully criticized BioWare for what they did with Veilguard, but has recently switched her stance on a few things, mostly due to Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. First by making a smug, disingenuous video defending the blatant DEI in KCD2, and since then has now doubled down with a video discussing the culture war, which I have decided to respond to, in which I will address her with the same energy and treatment she addresses others with, and how she addresses the topic of the discussion.
I don't know, it's all about controversy and money, obviously. And it's about being on the right side of history, which there's no right side of history, and history is written by the people that win.
You mean exactly what your channel is basically about? The ads on your videos and YouTube memberships enabled, a series of videos going over the drama surrounding Dragon Age the Veilguard, and controversy surrounding Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, all of which has gained you an audience and money, because currently it's not your lore analysis videos. In terms of there being no right side of history and it being written by the winner, while true in the sense of being written by the winner, it doesn't necessarily mean the winner was in the right.
And winning in this war, which is not a war, because that's the thing, people are just delusional, like calling this a culture war or whatever, when it's just pixels on a screen, and at the end of the day, we're never going to be in agreement on what makes a game good and what makes it bad.
This is a disingenuous argument to make. While the name culture war is stupid, the meaning of it rings true. Two sides are clashing, woke and anti-woke, people who want true escapism with no agendas shoehorned, and the other group of people that want DEI, agendas, and ideologies that align with their worldviews. You're trying to minimize this by saying it's simply about pixels on a screen when you know it's not what it is. It's deeper than that, and the arguments involving it do matter. You should know this because your channel grew based on criticizing ideologies that were crammed in a game. You criticized people who didn't share the same views you had with Dragon Age the Veilguard, yet you want to act disingenuous about this now when you've been getting heat for simping for Kingdom Come Deliverance 2.
I would rather people collectively awaken and get common sense than, than just fight invisible battles, because it's never gonna end. You know what I mean? People are just gonna find the next thing to get mad about.
Okay then, Nostradamus, what is awakening and getting common sense? Enlighten us. I mean, you've only started uploading on YouTube 9 months ago and was mainly talking about Dragon Age the Veilguard non-stop, and before then you were relatively unknown, but please share your wisdom with us. What are these invisible battles? Was pushing back against Veilguard an invisible battle? Of course not. But that's right, I get it. Pushing back against Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is an invisible battle, all because you like the game and your dumbass is too delusional to see the blatant wokeness in the game. So instead of owning up to simping for woke slop, you made this video to validate your purchase and save face, in order to regain subscribers and followers on social media, because clearly the backlash you've been receiving has been bothering you. The quote-unquote invisible battles ends when fence-sitting consumer pigs like you understand what people with spines are fighting for. I understand this is hard to get through your cinder block sized head, but all of this DEI bullshit doesn't magically go away. especially when you give games a pass for whatever biases you have towards said game, and the only real way to combat this is by closing our wallets and letting our voices be heard. People will find the next thing to be mad about because there's always a studio releasing a game riddled with propaganda. After all, the games industry is full of activists that won't hesitate to cram their ideologies in anything. You obviously know and see this with BioWare, but other studios have done this as well. Or maybe you don't know since you've been on autopilot like an NPC spewing verbal sewage, but I'll enlighten you and make things easy. There's Naughty Dog, Bethesda, Larian Studios, Ubisoft, EA, and yes chica, Warhorse Studios too, just to name a few. You can say people will find the next thing to get mad about, but you're literally doing the exact same thing you criticize others for in your video. It's total hypocrisy and cognitively dissonant. In fact, it's what gravitated people towards your channel in the first place, by you finding something new to get mad and outraged at BioWare about. You rode that train until the brakes fell off. But that didn't stop you from repairing those brakes and getting ready for another ride on that YouTube clout train. Clearly this is the case when you're making videos about where former Velguard devs are now and what Mass Effect 5 may be like. Since lore videos aren't raking in the ad revenue or those super chat donations, you'll stick with finding other games to be mad about, whether it's justified or not. This is obvious because we all know you won't stop making culture war videos no matter how much you call it a waste of time. However, the argument you made is hypocritical because you said it yourself. It's never going to end. So by your own logic, what's the point of you making videos, streams, and posts talking about what the studios are doing? By your own logic, you should just shut up, consume product, and stay silent.
Veilguard was an example of everything wrong with the DEI policies in companies, and that opened a door to conversations, but people took that and ran away with it. Because the problem, that's the problem, right? Like with the entire like conversation with like Veilguard and Avowed and this and that, is like, oh, if it has pronouns, it's woke. And if it's woke, it's the devil and it's bad and we should be upset about this. We should be mad about this. We should be, we don't like this. This is bad. This is hateful. And it's like, okay, who told you that?
Oh, like how you took the conversation with Veilguard and ran with it? So it's okay when you can do it and benefit off of it as well, but other people couldn't criticize Veilguard for his DEI policies and can't compare the DEI in Veilguard to other games such as Avowed or KCD2? Why? Is it because you know there's similarities between Veilguard and KCD2 that will expose you as a hypocrite? And newsflash, this didn't start with Veilguard. This has been going on long before that game. People didn't run with it after Veilguard. People were calling this out since at least 2015. Just because you just recently became aware of it doesn't mean Veilguard was a jumping off point for the anti-woke conversation. While KCD2's DEI nonsense is not on the same level as Veilguard, it still doesn't change the fact that KCD2 is woke. Warhorse retconned Henry and Hans to be bisexual when before they were canonically straight. They shoehorned Musa, a black Muslim, in 1403 Bohemia. All of which makes no sense. You and other shills should not be trying to dispute this. Daniel Vavra said himself that there were no black people in medieval Bohemia. Also keep in mind that Warhorse did their own research, traveled to Bohemia, and had professional historians help them with KCD1. Plus, if you did your own research, you would find nothing about Musa going to Bohemia or anything about him meeting Sigismund. While the game is fictional, it was intended to be strongly rooted in history and have authenticity. It wasn't some make-believe fairy tale. So why now, all of a sudden, did Warhorse cram DEI and KCD2? Use that big dome of yours and think. Games with pronouns are woke and tend to be bad games usually, such as Veilguard and Avowed. You don't have to play either of those games to know that they're woke trash. Having pronoun selectors, specifically non-binary or male and female characters being able to use opposite pronouns in games is absolutely retarded, and is done to social engineer people to accept that delusional nonsense as the norm. This is not exclusive to fantasy RPGs. In some workplaces, employees are required to assign their preferred pronouns, and other coworkers are coerced to use them in order to avoid losing their jobs or facing repercussions. My brother has to deal with this at his job, where in one instance a fellow employee told their supervisor that he didn't use the correct pronouns, and he was called into the office to be told that he has to use that employee's preferred pronouns. But you would probably know this is a real issue if you went outside and tossed some grass instead of fighting invisible battles. You can be disingenuous all you want about the valid criticism towards pronouns, since you have no real argument to defend it being in games where it doesn't belong. No one had to tell us pronouns are woke. People came to that conclusion based on biological reality. All it requires is common sense. But since you don't mind pronouns, I'll refer to you as dumb/fuck.
Because Baldur's Gate is right there, and it's proof that you can have pronouns in a game. Veilguard took that, right? And said, okay, this can make money. And instead of like putting actual effort into the end product and making it good, so that representation is seamless and it doesn't really affect anyone, it doesn't matter, and it makes it more agreeable, because at the end of the day, we live in a society and we're gonna be exposed to things that we're not comfortable with. Like, there's gonna be conversations that we're not comfortable having, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. Instead of like making it more seamless and more natural, which Baldur's Gate 3 did, they took that and ran away with it of like, oh, pandering to a minority is gonna make us so much money. Like, they ate it up with Baldur's Gate 3, and Baldur's Gate 3 became Game of the Year. If we amp the ante, we are gonna be Game of the Year, and we're gonna make so much money. They completely lost the plot of, to be able to make such moves in video games, you have to be able to make a good product to begin with. Like, the base product has to be solid for you to add on top of that. You cannot cut corners and take away from the foundation, because if you keep piling shit on top of that, it's gonna crumble, which is what happened with Veilguard.
Baldur's Gate 3 winning awards despite having pronouns does not change the fact that it's woke trash. Nor does it mean games before couldn't and didn't have pronouns in them. Again, Veilguard didn't create these trends. We all didn't jump on the culture war bandwagon with Veilguard like you did. Just like there was nothing stopping games such as Dragon Age Origins or Oblivion from having body type A and body type B years ago. But you want to know why those games didn't have pronouns or body type A and B? Because games back then weren't woke or had activist developers running the industry. Developers back then didn't try to appease ESG investors, nor did they had a revolving door of consulting firms ran by radical leftists, or activist games journalists that provides praise and acknowledgement to games with DEI, one being Jeff Keighley's Game Awards. BioWare was already a woke-infested studio years before Veilguard. Have you been living under a rock? Dragon Age Inquisition leaned more towards woke elements compared to previous entries. Same goes for Mass Effect Andromeda, which by the way, had an openly racist Punjabi booty warrior work on the game. Then came Anthem, an absolute trash heap, full of bugs and representation to please fellow activists. The quality of BioWare games went to shit, not just from a technical standpoint, but from the writing and characters. The studio was infested with far-left woke-tards that made their intentions clear on social media long before Veilguard was even a thought. The reality is, BioWare was going to have pronouns and all the other goofy DEI shit regardless of what Larian Studios did with Baldur's Gate 3. What was so subtle, seamless, and natural about Baldur's Gate 3? Was it the ability to put a penis on a female character or a vagina on a male character? Was it the bear sex or licking goblin toes? Did the bear or goblin use the correct pronouns? Or did the party members that all want to have sex with your character use the correct pronouns? Truly some masterful subversion there, definitely not in your face identity politics at all. The base product being solid does not negate any wokeness in said game. That's the same nonsense you and other shills that defend KCD2 keep using. You'd think, the game is solid, it's fun, the reviews and sales are great, it has some woke stuff in it, but it's totally seamless and natural. It's not really noticeable. Wepa. Just because a game is successful, it doesn't mean the woke aspects can be ignored by everyone. There are plenty of games that are woke but are successful mainly due to brand recognition, such as God of War Ragnarok or Uncharted 4. A lot of gamers, unfortunately, allow companies to get away with bullshit because they lack self-control and have the fear of missing out, such as egregious business practices and DEI shoehorning, just like Baldur's Gate 3 and KCD2.
But, you know, I feel like that's obviously common sense of one thing is not like the other. That's the problem with people like this, is like, oh, but you said this about this. Why is it okay in that? Because it's not the same. And I wasn't mad. That's what a lot of people don't understand. Like, I wasn't mad about trans representation in video games. Or like, oh, top surgery scars. I'm upset that you detract from something. You subtract things from a very good plot and a very good foundation to suit a narrative and a very obviously political agenda, because it is what it is. It's their writing is on the wall.
Your gripes with BioWare on how they mishandled Velgard is similar to people's gripes with how Warhorse mishandled KCD2. They detracted and subtracted from a very good plot and foundation to serve a narrative and a very obvious political agenda. They made Henry and Hans bisexual, added quests where you save the tiny hat people, and they placed a black Muslim in Bohemia who lectures and cucks Henry. All of this despite Vavra stating there were no black people in medieval Bohemia. I'm repeating this so you and other defenders understand why there's justifiable criticism towards KCD2. If you go back on what you made a big stink about in the first game, then alter history in your sequel to justify black Muslim inclusion, how could that not be considered forced DEI? People are right for calling out your hypocrisy. Dragon Age had established lore that was thrown away for ideology. KCD1 had established lore that was also tossed out the window for similar reasons. Whether one was more extreme than the other is irrelevant. They're both wrong. BioWare and Warhorse screwed up. The writing is on the wall. You not having an issue with trans representation in games and top surgery scars says a lot about where you stand on matters. Trans people want to be seen as a sex they claim they really are, so why do they need trans in games or top surgery scars? Why not just play as a sex they fantasize about transitioning into? And why should developers spend time and resources to include these things for such a small fraction of people? Wouldn't you want that time and effort to go into things that would actually be beneficial to the game? What does trans representation do to enhance the overall experience?
It's not about Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. When I, talk about Kingdom Come, it's because it's the most recent example of why one thing is not the same as the other, and you cannot judge two titles by the same parameters, because it just simply doesn't work like that. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, whether people just want to twist the truth to suit their narrative, which you can do that, but I'm not going to sit here and believe that or agree with you just to get views, because I don't want to do that. But Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, it's an action RPG. I don't care if you want to say that it's an action game with RPG-like elements. The RPG is very predominant in Kingdom Come, okay? Same thing with Baldur's Gate 3. It had woke aspects. Sure, woke, it's the word of the week, the month, the year, whatever. But you cannot expect to sanitize everything to suit your liking, because it's exactly what other people were doing. You cannot expect to see less black people and less gay people in video games, while the other side wants more black people and more gay people, because you're asking the same thing. People in their late 40s, 50s, 60s even are completely baffled by today's culture war, which is insane. And it just goes to show that it's a sign of the times. You know what I mean?
No one is saying Velgard and KCD2 are the exact same, but rather they both share similarities. Both are woke slop, and both developers ruined what was established in order to implement DEI. And that's why you and others are being criticized for going hard on Velgard, but protecting KCD2 with all of your might. You can twist the truth to suit your narrative, but I won't do that or agree with people to get views. The irony. No one said Kingdom Come Deliverance was an action game with RPG-like elements. Yes, you can make choices, but it's not the same as Baldur's Gate 3. You're trying to compare the two as if they can be judged by the same criteria. The same way you're claiming people are comparing Velgard and KCD2 as if they're the exact same. In Baldur's Gate 3, you create your own character. In Kingdom Come Deliverance, you play as a preset character. Henry has a backstory and personality. A better comparison would be with Geralt from The Witcher. He too is a preset character, and while there are choices in the games, but they usually fall in line with his character and what's been established. And the same could be said for Henry. Well, at least in KCD 1. You're trying to dismiss the word woke as if it has no meaning or doesn't really apply to Baldur's Gate 3 or KCD 2, when it most certainly does. As I explained before with both games, there's things in the game that make it woke, whether you like it or not. I get that it might be uncomfortable to come to grips with the truth, but the fact is that you support and defend games with political motivations that are catered towards the same weirdos that enjoyed Veilguard. Companies are politically motivated to cram in their ideologies in games and media as a whole, regardless of context or setting. This has been going on longer than a year. Veilguard was not the first of its kind. We can go as far back to 2014 with the Left Behind DLC for The Last of Us. It's centered around 14-year-old Ellie and her black female friend Riley, who eventually fall in love and share a kiss. While this may seem like a non-issue to some, this was the precursor to what was to come with Neil Druckmann and his crew at Naughty Dog. Things progressively got worse in Uncharted 4 and The Last of Us 2, and no doubt Intergalactic will double down on the agenda pushing. We don't expect everything to suit our liking, but what we do want is true escapism. We don't want modern day libtard bullshit or right-wing rhetoric either. We don't want agendas from either side. But unfortunately, the industry is filled with far-left activists that keep cramming their ideologies in games. Which is why, when we see a game with suspicious-looking characters or dialogue, our pattern recognition radars turn on and we see what's coming. And history has taught us that developers can't be trusted, no matter how interested we are in a game. That possibility of a developer ruining said game by pandering to the modern audience is always there, because it's happened time and time again. People in their 40s, 50s, and 60s are aware of the culture war. Obviously not to the same extent as younger generations. However, there are older people who know exactly what's going on just as much as some younger people. Dragon Quest creator Yuji Horii, who's 71 years old, and Shonen Jump magazine editor Kazuhiko Torishima, who's 72 years old, both did an interview in 2024 speaking about Dragon Quest. Specifically the remake of Dragon Quest III, where they express frustration and confusion with the West in regards to how they make changes in games, one being the removal of male and female selection in favor of body type A and B. They also referred to the actions from those that put those changes in place as a cult, and asked who is really asking for these changes. So that's one example of two guys past 60 years old outside the United States that understand what's going on with the culture war. It's not a sign of the times, because we're living in it and we want things to go back to normal. But when you decide to be a fence sitter with a big mouth, that doesn't make things any better for anyone.
I feel like woke is a very specific thing for me. Woke means injecting like ideology and agenda and politics where it doesn't belong. That's woke for me. A gay character in an RPG is not woke. A black character in a game is not woke to me because it works. If it doesn't work, it's woke. If every 2 seconds the character is asking about how hard they have it because they're a black woman and how, they're a minority and no one likes them and how racist the world is and how evil white people are, that's woke. But if it's just a black character being a character, a good character on top of that, it's just a game. It's just media. It's just reality.
What you explained is what Warhorse did with KCD 2, and it's sad that you can't see that. Warhorse made Henry and Hans bisexual, added gay characters, more than KCD 1 had. They added quests where you save minorities, and added Musa to the main quest for the sole purpose of talking shit about Europeans, lecturing, and cucking Henry. The game was injected with ideologies, agendas, and politics. What was injected in KCD 2 does not work because it's supposed to be as historically accurate as possible and contradicts what Warhorse stood for and what Vavra said during KCD 1, having several gay characters as if it was commonplace, retconning two characters that showed no interest in men previously and shoehorning a black Muslim in 1403 Bohemia with convenient plot armor is not the image of reality that you're trying to paint it to be. It's woke, whether you want to accept that or not.
Sometimes you have to just take things for what they are and enjoy them for what they are. I understand wanting to criticize things and wanting to make things better. Okay, but you cannot just try to make things better for you or for a group of people that think like you, because it's just not achievable. It's not realistic. We all have to agree that you have to push and you have to retreat at some point, because it's just how life works. No one is ever gonna bend over backwards to suit what you want. And if you want to see something in media that is exactly what you want to see, you have to make it yourself.
Accept things for what they are and enjoy them. You built your channel on criticizing Velgard. If we use your logic, you wanted to make things better for yourself and the group of people that think like you. You say criticizing something to make things better for ourselves or those that think like us is not achievable, which is bullshit. Why do you think Velgard failed? Or Dustborn, Concord, Suicide Squad killed the Justice League, Saints Row 2022, Star Wars Outlaws, or Starfield? The reason is simple, because people criticize them. Yes, people tend to share similar opinions, but that also applies to you. The difference is that unlike you, some of us are willing to criticize any company pushing DEI. As for us having to agree that sometimes we have to push back and retreat, yeah, no, fuck that. When cowards retreat, that doesn't ever make matters improve. Obviously, this isn't an actual war where lives are at stake, so trying to convince people to not criticize certain studios is a terrible take. No one is going to die for criticizing a video game. No need to retreat or back down. And it's also very hypocritical considering how you built your audience. Furthermore, if companies allegedly don't bend over for what we want, then why did CI Games remove body type A and B and replace it with male and female in Lords of the Fallen? When you were posting and uploading non-stop about Velgard, you weren't saying jack shit about stepping back and retreating. But now that your takes on KCD2 are not receiving the same praise as your takes on Velgard, all of a sudden you want to pretend you're taking a rational approach while also trying to seem based and unapologetic when your behavior is that of a corporate slave. The disingenuous argument that if we want to see media exactly how we want, then we should make our own media. As the people that do that don't get attacked for trying to make an alternative. While it's good for people to make their own media, you're only saying that so people can stop criticizing the woke games that you like. If we stay silent on existing media that's woke, then that won't make media change for the better.
But we also have to agree that extremes don't get anything done. And every single day, people get more and more extremist in their views, thinking that, oh, because you got an inch, now the war is won. And parroting someone else's stakes, instead of thinking for yourself, it's how we got here. Like, I love how people like to say, like, oh, respecting people's pronouns is how we got here. I don't care. You do what you want to do, I'll do what I want to do. But it's like, oh, yeah, well, guess what? Letting you run rampant on the internet, thinking that you're a savior, the second coming of Jesus, and that you yelling at someone online, it's gonna change anything. It's also how we got here to begin with. It's letting people think that they can speak for everyone else, how we got here. And no one having an individual thought and everyone being in an echo chamber is exactly how we got here.
No, being a fence-sitting centrist is how we've gotten where we are today. Because clowns like you are too chicken shit to pick a side and stay consistent. There's one side that wants woke nonsense in games, while the other side wants no woke nonsense in games. That's what people have been fighting against. What do you think was the reason people found your channel in the first place, or other channels that are similar to yours? You spoke against the woke nonsense in Velgard. You did that for months, and it gave people the impression you were really about going against wokeness in games, and you knew that. But now you're making this video because in actuality, you don't really stand for anything. Nothing was stopping you from making this video months ago before Velgard released. But you decided to make this video now because KCD2 has gotten you to show your true colors. you're no different than the other channels that defended KCD2. Being extreme in your views is how to combat DEI. When people were being passive and acting like centrists is why we ended up here in the first place. People gave companies an inch and they took a mile. It's not the other way around. The woke and anti-woke arguments are not two sides of the same coin. Only fence-sitting morons believe that crap. As for parroting someone else's take, isn't that what you were doing with Veilguard? You thought you were the only person criticizing that game? Or you were making profound statements that no one else was saying? Newsflash, people tend to share the same opinion on certain topics. That's not parroting. But if we use your logic, you're parroting the same takes as other people who have been defending KCD2. How we got here was by individuals seeing media get turned into an insane asylum and agreed that this shit needs to stop and we have to take back our hobbies before things decline even further. Respecting people's pronouns and tolerating lunacy is how we got here, and you saying you don't care just shows how clueless you are. You try to present yourself as some intellectual that's ahead of the curve, when in reality, you're miles behind on everything that's been going on in gaming. People running rampant on the internet is exactly what you do. That's like your second home. And you clearly want people to think of you as some sort of savior. After all, you do refer to yourself as God Empress, and said several times in your video that we have to agree. The irony is that you say people need to touch grass, yet you're the one terminally online crashing out about people not wanting to play a woke video game and made a video trying to convince people to be fence sitters because both sides are bad. Wepa. I think that's all I need to respond to, so I'll close out the video with this. Nore, you can bend the knee like a good shill. Take whatever stance that's convenient for you. Pander to both sides in order to maintain an audience. Stay glued on social media while telling people to touch grass. And continue to keep that superiority complex you got going on. Stay delusional and think you're on the right side of history. Because like all fence sitters, you'll jump to the winning side and claim victory. Until the next thing comes that makes you compromise.